Chapter 5, Part 2. Grandma told Fudge he could open his presents while his friends watched. Jenny bought him a musical Jack-in-the-Box. When you turn the handle around, it plays Pop Goes the Weasel. When you reach the part of the song about Pop, the top opens and a funny clown jumps up. Fudge loved it. He clapped his hands and laughed, but Sam started to scream. No, no more, take it away. He hid his face in his hands and wouldn't look up until Grandma promised to put the Jack-in-the-Box in another room. Fudge opened Ralph's present next. It was a little wind-up car that ran all over the floor. I kind of liked it myself. So did Ralph, because he grabbed it away from Fudge and said, "Mine, mine." "No," Fudge shouted, "mine." When my mother heard the racket, she ran in from the kitchen. She explained to Ralph that he had brought the car to Fudge because it was his birthday. But Ralph wouldn't listen. I guess my mother was afraid he might throw up again this time on the rug. So she begged Fudge to let Ralph play with the car for a few minutes. But Ralph kept screaming it was his car. So Fudge started to cry. Finally, my mother took the car away and said, "Let's see what Sam brought you." Fudge liked that idea. He forgot about the little car and he ripped the paper and ribbon off of Sam's package. It turned out to be a big picture dictionary. The same kind the Arby's brought me a couple of months ago. Fudge got mad when he saw it. "No!" he yelled. "No more book!" He threw it across the room. "Fudge, that's a terrible thing to do," my mother said. "You mustn't do that to the nice book." "No book," Fudge said. Sam cried. "He doesn't like it. He doesn't like my present. I want to go home. I want to go home." Grandma tried to comfort Sam while my mother picked up the book. She gathered the wrapping paper and the ribbons and the cards together. Fudge didn't even look at any of his birthday cards. "Oh, well, he can't read, so I guess it doesn't make any difference." "Peter," my mother said, "let's start the games now. Quick." I checked the time. I hoped that the party was almost over, but no, it was only 1:30. Still an hour to go. So I went into my room where I had blown up a lot of balloons. My mother had this party book and it said 3-year-olds like to dance around with balloons. When I got back to the living room, my mom started the record player and I handed each kid a balloon. But they just stood there looking at me. I thought either the guy who wrote that party book is crazy or I am. "Show them how, Peter," my mother said. "Take a balloon and demonstrate." I felt like one of the world's greatest living fools, dancing around with a balloon, but it worked. As soon as the kids saw me doing it, they started dancing too. And the more they danced, the more they liked it. Until Jenny's balloon popped. That nearly scared Sam right out of his mind. He started yelling and crying. Fortunately, I had blown up 24 balloons. I was hoping they'd dance around the rest of the afternoon. Fudge got the idea of jumping up and down on the furniture. The others liked that too, so instead of dancing with their balloons, that's what they did. And soon they were running from room to room, yelling and laughing and having a great time. Then the doorbell rang. It was Mrs. Rudder. She lives in the apartment right under us. She wanted to know what was going on. She said it sounded like her ceiling was about to crash in on her any second. My mother explained that Fudge was having a little birthday party, and wouldn't she like to stay for some cake? Sometimes my mother is really clever. So Grandma entertained Mrs. Rudder in the kitchen while Fudge and his buddies jumped up and down on his new bed. It was delivered this morning. Fudge hadn't even slept in it yet. So naturally, when my mother found out what they were up to, she was mad. "Stop it right now," she said. "New bed, big boy," Fudge told her. Was he proud. "You won't have a new big boy bed for long if you don't stop jumping on it," my mother told him. "I know. Let's all sit down on the floor and hear a nice story." My mother selected a picture book from Fudge's bookshelf. "I heard that one," Jenny said when she saw it. "All right," my mother told her, "let's hear this one." She held up another book. "I heard that one too," Jenny said. I think my mother was starting to lose her patience, but she chose a third book and said, "We'll all enjoy this one even if we know it by heart. And if we do know it by heart, well, we can say it together." That's what Jenny did. And when my mother skipped a page by mistake, Jenny was right there to remind her. If you ask me, my mother felt like biting Jenny by that time. When the story was over, it was 2 o'clock and Ralph was sound asleep on the floor. My mother told me to put him up on Fudge's new bed while she took the rest of the children back to the living room. I tried and tried, but I couldn't lift Ralph. He must weigh a ton. So I left him sleeping on Fudge's floor and closed the door so he wouldn't hear any noise. On my way back to the living room, I wished the others would fall asleep too. Peter, my mother suggested, why don't you show them Dribble? Mom, Dribble's my pet. You don't go around using a pet to entertain a bunch of little kids. Didn't my mother know that? Please, Peter, my mother said. We've still got half an hour left and I don't know what to do with them anymore. Dribble, Fudge hollered. Dribble, dribble, dribble. I guess Sam and Jenny liked the way that sounded because they started to shout, Dribble, 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 even though they didn't even know what they were talking about. Oh, all right, I said, I'll show you Dribble. But you've got to promise to be very quiet. You mustn't make a sound. You might scare him. Okay? They all said okay. My mother went into the kitchen to chat with Grandma and Mrs. Rudder. I went into my room and came back carrying Dribble in his bowl. I put my finger over my lips to remind Fudge and his friends to be quiet. It worked. At first, nobody said a word. I put Dribble down on the table, and Fudge and Sam and Jenny stood over his bowl. Oh, turtle, Jenny said. Yes, Dribble's a turtle. He's my turtle, I said in a soft voice. See? See? Fudge whispered. They can all see, I told Fudge. Nice turtle, Sam said. I wondered why he wasn't afraid this time. What does Dribble do? Jenny asked. Do? He doesn't do anything special, I said. He's a turtle. He does turtle things. Like what? Jenny asked. What was with this kid anyway? Well, I said, he swims around a little and he sleeps on his rock and he eats. Does he make? Jenny asked. Make? I said. Yes, make a tinkle. Oh, that. Well, I'm sure. I guess so. Jenny laughed. She did, and so did Sam, and so did Fudge. I make tinkles too, Jenny said. Want to see? No, I said. See? See? Fudge laughed, pointing at Jenny. Jenny had a big smile on her face. Next thing I knew, there was a puddle on the rug. Mom, I hollered, come quick. My mother dashed in from the kitchen. What, Peter? What is it? Just look at what Jenny did, I said. What is it? My mother asked, eyeing the puddle. She made on the floor, I said. And on purpose. Oh, Jenny, my mother cried. You didn't. Did too, Jenny said. That was very naughty, my mother told her. You come with me. She scooped up Jenny and carried her into the bathroom. After that, Mom mopped up the puddle. Finally, the doorbell rang. It was 2:30. The party was over. I could hardly believe it. I was beginning to think it would never end. First, Ralph's mother came. She had to wake him up to get him out of the apartment. I guess even she couldn't carry him. Next, Jenny's mother came. Mom gave her Jenny's wet pants in a baggie. That was all she had to do. Jenny's mother was plenty embarrassed. Sam's mother came last, but he didn't want to go home now. Now that he was used to us, I guess he liked us. He cried, "More party! More!" Another time, his mother said, dragging him out of our apartment by the arm. My mother flopped down in a chair. Grandma bought her 2 aspirins and a glass of water. Here, dear, she said, maybe these will help. My mother swallowed the pills. She held her head. 3 is kind of young for a party, I told my mother. Peter Warren Hatcher, my mother began. Yes, I asked. You are absolutely right. I plopped down next to my mother. She put her arm around me. Then we both watched Fudge work his new Jack-in-the-Box. Later, when my father came home, he said, How did Fudge's party go? My mother and I looked at each other and we just laughed.